3 minutes, so the whole thing would be like a big 8-minute fight scene. I guess the thing with the Babas wouldn't last that long. It'd probably be 6. Yeah, I think that's how it timed it out. I said it was like 5 at the minimum, the whole entire thing. Again, this is several years ago. I'm just going off memory here. I don't have a copy of the script in front of me. It's buried in the annals of my computer somewhere. So, but all the Skulltulas come to life, and try to eat them. And they get tangled, and they use the vines, the whole strangulation wrapping around the vines, this time to their advantage. They swing from different parts of the wall, they flip, upside down. There's a point where Link is hanging by one leg or something, and he, there's, like, part of the wall comes loose, because it is dirt and bark, and it comes loose and hangs just so that and it's hanging him by his legs, so that it hangs above that spider web I mentioned earlier. And he kind of realizes what he has to do is just find a way to break through this spider web, so Saria tries to grab him again, and, tries to help him, and he flips over upside down and uses the bark sticking out for leverage and tries to, launch off of it and falls. Problem is that the vine does not hold him. I guess he was planning to bungee jump or something, the vine holding him and fall through the spider web so that he wouldn't die. And so I wanted to have him fall through the spider web, and then the vine breaks and he falls, and, everybody's like, oh, well, he's dead. But if you've seen the game, he falls into water. He's fine. So I'm going to take a breath here, and so I explained that in great detail, because I could get away with explaining it in great detail, but that's the first big, fight scene and everything. So, yeah. After that, it's pretty easy. I decided to cut, because the Deku Scrubs aren't a big race, as they are in Majora's Mask, and if there ever was, like, a Majora's Mask, I don't know, movie, TV show, something dumb like that. How they spin off kids' TV shows from movies? I can kind of imagine Majora's Mask being the TV show spin-off to Ocarina of Time's film trilogy, can't you? Like, I'm just not talking about, like, me making it and hoping that would happen. I'm just saying, like, that's how it seems to be story-wise, don't you think? So, yeah, you could probably actually make infinite episodes of a show about Majora's Mask. Not infinite, but you could take that a lot of places, because the time recycles. You'd have all sorts of fun with that. But yeah, so I cut the Dekus out of the equation, because you don't see them in a major part in Ocarina of Time much. They weren't in the movie. So he falls into the water and pulls himself out basically in this room we are now in. And by the way, see the controller stick issues I'm having? If you can see, it bobs, like, if I barely touch it, if I push, as little as I can, it doesn't go anywhere. And then at some point it goes all the way up, it's some sensor. It doesn't really have a middle. It just has a little bit and all the way, which is why I was having so much trouble aiming the slingshot. But here's Goma. And, so at this point I wanted to have a little bit of slowdown in the film because of a story that's, because of personal life experience, just sticking this in here, but I have a friend who, because, trust me, this Goma fight is going to take forever. It is the longest Goma fight I have ever done. This is Failsville right here on this Let's Play. I don't know why it took so long. It's a fail. But, so I can tell the story. I have a friend that was trying to beat Ocarina of Time for the first time, or play it really for the first time, and she was asking for help over the phone. Back before we had internet to do all this sort of thing. I mean, we had a dial-up connection. Back when I wrote the fan fiction of OOT or whatever, we had dial-up. In fact, probably even when I wrote the screenplay, we had dial-up. And so this friend was asking for help over the phone, and I'm very proud to say, was I using a cheat guide? Was I using, any resources at all? No, I was using, just going completely off of memory, and I got her through the entire, first, 8th or 7th of the game or so, but definitely through this part. And so I got her through the entire temple, because she's really clueless when it kind of came to a lot of games. And so, but here's the funny part. So when she comes in, I tell her that she's facing a spider boss. She walks into the room, and she's like, a spider boss? Oh my gosh, I hate spiders. And she's freaking out. She was really not okay, and I think, how old was I, 13? I was probably 13 or 14, so she's the same age. And so she was freaking out and, like, crying and stuff. I'm like, okay, you're gonna need to... And so she starts, like, freaking out hardcore, screaming, crying, whole thing. And I'm like, okay, you need to, you know, wait till it lays its eggs, then shoot the eggs. Alright, you know, it's gonna drop on the thing, and use a Deku nut to stun it, if, you know, and then it slash its eye. And she's crying. This goes on for, like... well over 5 minutes. I'm not going to say a whole 10 minutes, but it goes on for a long time. And I'm doing my best to help her. I'm like, well, where are you at? And she said, it hasn't shown up yet. It's just making noises. So, yeah, think about that for a minute. Basically, she was running around wailing in the boss room without having looked up at the ceiling. Like, I kind of either didn't say to look up at the ceiling or assumed she had already done so because she was freaking out. But she was running around on the floor and not doing any fighting at all while I'm trying to give her these tips on how to fight it. And it's just crawling up on the ceiling. She hasn't even looked up, you know, at its eye. And I'm like, in order to start the fight. And I was like, are you serious? So I'm like, ugh, okay. I said, okay, hun, I was about to use her name, and I don't think she would care too much. But either way, I was like, okay, hun, look up at the ceiling. And she's like, what? Look up at the... I said, just look up at the ceiling. The fight hasn't started yet. No, look up at the ceiling. So she looks up, and then she reached a whole new volume. It was like, you know, I thought she was loud and freaked before. Oh, man, she reached a new octave. And so she was panicking, and I started laughing despite myself. I'm like, okay, remember all that stuff I told you earlier? I'd stick to it. You can beat it, you know. It didn't take her that long to beat it, and she was very pleased with herself. The reason I tell this whole entire kind of long story... yeah, see, it is taking me forever to beat this thing, but at least I have time to tell the story. But yeah, the reason I tell this story is because, as far as doing the whole screenplay thing and wanting it to be a movie someday, I made this seem tense. Instead of him just falling in the water and crawling out and then Goma attacking him, I wanted it to be kind of tense, and I wanted him to be able to hear Saria. It's pretty much a straight tunnel all the way down. I didn't make the tree as tall as it was. I mean, it is just tall. They don't get up as high in it. So she finds a way to talk to him, and so he can kind of hear her voice. Can't hear it real well, but he can hear her voice, and he can hear the rustling of the thing on the ceiling. But there's this period of time where it's just not, you know, you're not sure if there's anything down there, and you can't see this thing yet. And so I wanted that to be tense and scary and kind of eerie and atmospheric, you know, like, as Brad Bird says, there's not enough sneaking around in movies anymore. There should be more sneaking around. So there you go. So yeah, I remember writing that to be kind of slow compared to all the stuff that had come before. Not real long and slow. It's probably no more than a minute, but it feels longer, you know. It's tense. Anyway, then the thing falls down, and he quite literally, when he jumps off the big thorny wall they were on, he actually still had, what falls down with him is some of these sticks, and he actually uses the stick. It's forked, and it's going to be a callback to a scene earlier in the movie where he was making something like this. He uses a forked stick that falls down from the wall as a slingshot, and it's not just out of nowhere. Like I said, it is a callback to like I said, he's very inventive. A scene that was earlier during the whole kind of, this is Kokiri Village, this is what everybody thinks of Link kind of introductory stuff. But so he kind of makes a makeshift one out of that and shoots it off, and that's kind of the last time you see it. I'm not going to have a big inventory of weapons he uses all the time, and if there is, he uses the bow and arrow more than he uses the slingshot. So it's just that one-time thing that he shoots it in the eye, and, you know, it freaks out for a minute, and then he stabs it. I don't think the Deku nuts even come into play. Okay, so at that point, he doesn't get out via glowing blue passageway. He gets out, the Deku tree lifts a root, and it opens a way through the earth that he crawls out, and on the way he kicks up the little green stone that he's supposed to take with him, and he stops and he sees it for half a second, and Navi's like, get out, because it's kind of crumbling and falling, and the way is closing it. But he grabs this green stone and takes it out, and he said, you found it. Well, he gives him his dying message, and it's not the same as all of this stuff about the three goddesses and everything. I think, I don't know if I told part of the story about the three goddesses, but that's not important. I do remember what I wanted to talk about at this point here. Sorry, this message right here, appears for so long, and now it switched, but that message was on there so long because I was like checking some other things. This is obviously an emulator. But yeah. So, here's what I wanted to talk about. One of the things I always thought was interesting when people write fan fiction or fake screenplays for a movie or whatever they write, even like, fan theories. I've seen entire theories written around what do power, wisdom, and courage grant the people that have them. The parts of the Triforce, I mean, and what do the goddesses really have control over or whatever. Like, I always liked in this creation myth, you have Din creates the world. She, like, gives the universe form, which is pretty badass. That's, like, that definitely represents power. I think that's the most, like, awesome, display of boom, let there be stuff, and stuff like that, and it appears. But Nehru gives it law, and I don't know if how people interpret that to be, but I think given the visual here, we're meant to assume that Nehru causes the natural order of things to come into being, by which I mean like here we see clouds and sunshine or whatever, but atmosphere and the laws of nature and gravity and, like the laws of energy and conservation of mass or whatever, just all the laws of the universe. She, creates physics and shit. She, creates physics and shit, yeah. And Ferrari, of course, creates life, all the living creatures. I like to think that Nehru, not Nehru, but Din created the bodies of the creatures or something like that, or maybe they were created out of dirt, like in a lot of creation stories, and Ferrari breathed life into it, I don't know. Because plants as well as animals came into being. But anyway, so going off of that, I was like, I'm not sure it's power, wisdom, and courage, because a lot of people theorize about what the Triforce gives each person, and I tried to write this very thickly into the screenplay, was, it's not literally power, wisdom, and courage, because courage is a really sucky power. I mean, but Link defeats Ganondorf completely, and it's like, is it just because the good guy should win? Well, I don't think it should be that cut and dry. That's really babyish, and the good guy wins or something like that. Or was it because he had Zelda? It's because the two pieces overcame the one? Well, yeah, that's a little bit more interesting and complex. That's a little bit more I don't know, as far as a theory of balance or something, it's a little bit more, I don't want to say Buddhist in nature, but that's the first thing I thought of. The idea of the two pieces overcoming one because the balance was shifted. But I don't think that's it either. I don't think courage just gives you courage. I think the pieces choose their owners, based on the qualities that they possess, and it's not like power, wisdom, and courage are the only three virtues in the world, but I think they can represent a tripartite of values that forces within a person. And I was like, what if power represents body, the power of the body, wisdom represents the power of the mind, and courage represents the power of the spirit? That makes so much more sense than just trying to think of them as three virtues that control everything when they're really, what about patience? What about, there's a bunch of other virtues out there, come on, or a bunch of other forces. Power, is that power of what? It's really vague. So I was like, okay, what about body, mind, and spirit? Are the three forces, that control a person's, natural inclinations and what's strongest in a human being. Obviously with Ganondorf, it's body. He's built like a truck, and he is very, I made him hedonist in the script. He's focused on physical pleasure, blah blah blah, because he's never had any of that stuff. I mean, he's had way more than the rest of his people because he's their king, and presumably he gets all the girls. But he's the only dude in town. But that's his focus. So with Zelda, it's wisdom, but she's actually tempted more toward evil than any of the other characters. Ooh, we're reaching the end here. I'll just say, I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but the other, basically, as far as the screenplay here, after the Great Deku Tree died, I just took this thing of Mito, he's just upset, oh, you killed the Deku Tree, you monster, walks away. Oh, heck no. In the screenplay, he's get mad and rally the other people against him and have him thrown out of town. you know, like, why else would they just let him leave the forest if they were little, like, if I'm gonna talk to some of the villagers here, because I couldn't remember what their reactions were, and they're like, did something happen? Why are you leaving the village, or whatever? And I was like, that's dumb. Wouldn't they be, like, either worried about Link's life, leaving the village, you're gonna die, or, you know, why would they just let him leave? Well, if they try to throw him out because they think he killed the Deku Tree, and they think Sari is just sticking up for him because that's what she does, and they don't believe her. So I was like, okay, that's how I wrote it, is that they throw him out, and Mito's happy to throw him out, just basically not because